I'm through with standing in line to clubs I'll never get in. It's like the bottom of the ninth, and I'm never gonna win. This life hasn't turned out quite the way I want it to be. If you're new here, welcome in, and if you know me, welcome back. And if you're asking what I just said earlier, if you don't know who Nickelback is, oh boy. Anyway, you don't have to know anything about basketball to know who Shaq is. I'm sure that you have a family member that goes, oh yeah, the guy who owns Papa John's. Oh yeah, the guy from that General commercial. And then you have that one weirdo in your family that goes, oh yeah, from Kazam. Shaq is always doing something, whether it's DJing, forgetting players that play for the Detroit Pistons, or hating on Rudy Gobert. He is never idle. Which is why I found it very weird that Shaq started co-hosting a new game show and no one that I know ever brought it up or talked about it. The show was called Lucky 13, where it was Shaq and Gina Rodriguez, former star of Jane the Virgin and former center of a scandal where she sang along to the N-word to a rap song on Instagram. Doesn't have to do the game show, but that will always be the first thing that comes to my mind. I mean, that video wasn't even leaked, I think. She uploaded that herself. Anyway, I'll explain the premise of the game.
13 questions are all that stand between tonight's contestants and up to $1 million.
This is Lucky 13.
You have 13 lucky potential contestants on stage. A few will be chosen to answer 13 true or false questions. After the round, they'll be able to change one of the answers if they want. And the amount of questions that they get right will tell them how much money that they win. Or could win, because the contestants afterwards have to predict how many they got right. Before we continue this video, I really want to thank everyone that has liked, followed, subscribed, shared these videos. It's really helped me out over the course of this year, and I just hope to continue to make bigger and better YouTube videos for you guys. So let's get back to this game show review. So I chose episode 4 of the show because I think that starting with the pilot wouldn't have been fair, and I wanted to see if Shaq and Gina had gotten into a rhythm of some sort by now. I know it's only 4 episodes, but I feel like you start to get your feet on the ground with these kinds of things. So to start the show, Shaq and Gina introduce the show, and the first point of suspense is who the first contestant is going to be. And then they pick a guy named Hans.
Playing tonight's first game is... Hans van Walter.
So Hans comes up and talks a little bit about themselves, and they do an interview about what he does for fun and what he plans to do with all the money that he's going to win.
What do you plan to do with the money should you win?
I'm planning on having the biggest Lucky 13 party ever with all the puns. So I'm gonna do Clucky 13, like a bucket of fried chicken, a Jane the Virgin margarita.
And I'll give Hans a lot of props because he has way more energy on this game show than Gina and Shaq combined. We'll talk about that later. Anyway, we get to the actual game part of the game, which is Shaq asking true or false questions.
Katie Ledecky swam in the 2012 and 2016 Olympics while she was a teenager. True or false?
I feel like that probably sounds about right for her age. So I am going to say true.
The main thing that gets me is that there are 3 people on stage, but during this stage, Gina has nothing to do or say for minutes at a time.
For anaphylactic shock, the epi actually stands for epinephrine, so this is false.
And this part of the show is the guest just basically talking stuff out loud while Shaq and Gina just stare at them.
So the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, that's the big V that's in Washington, D.C. And I know her name was Maya Lin. I'm pretty sure that it was for a contest, so I'm going to say true. Okay, so a black truffle. I think that those are like the mushrooms that the, what am I thinking? Oh, the pigs, they go digging for.
And while I know that Shaq and Gina can't help him out, they just feel awkward standing up there. Another thing here is that for a majority of the show, Shaq's face does not give off game show host whatsoever. It gives off super serious. We have the guest telling more jokes than the hosts, and the guest is doing great here.
It's its name from its creator, Doris Epstein. True or false?
Well, I am a doctor. Yay.
Kevin Bacon wrote a vegan cookbook. True or false?
That would be the definition of irony, I suppose. See?
Also, there doesn't seem to be a time limit, so the show is actually basically the guests talking to themselves, or at least this part of the show where they're trying to figure out what the answer is. It's just the guests talking out loud to themselves. This feels like I'm watching someone take part of an SAT test or something. And this wouldn't be so bad, this segment wouldn't be so bad if it didn't last for 5.5 minutes. 5.5 minutes to answer 13 true or false questions. Also, by the way, this show is an hour long, so 42 minutes of showtime, plus commercials, of course. So yeah, this segment lasted 5.5 minutes. And after the round, it's time for Pepsi Play, where the player can change an answer if they want.
Oh, and that sound means it's time for Pepsi Play.
Woo!
Your 13 questions along with your answers are up on the board. Is there one you wish you could take back? Well, thanks to Pepsi. Thank you, Pepsi. You now have a chance to refresh one of your answers.
Hans decides not to, and now we have the point of the show where they can predict how many questions they got right. I like this part where you could predict the range. I would change the prize values, but that's just a nitpick. It's a really fun play on the 50-50 probability of the true-false question, which I like. Another thing I like about this show is that this show is not emphasizing that you must know everything, but you must know what you know. You see what I'm saying? Now, the first guest, Hans, guesses in the 10 to 12 range, which has the potential for $100,000. In addition to that, he also has a chance to pick a lucky number, which if he gets the answer exactly right, he gets an extra $25,000. He goes with 11. And now it's time to just go over the answers. 13 US states begin with a vowel. He says false and gets them correct. Actually, I'm not going to go through all these questions, but I will say that some of these questions are actually hard. I learned that Agatha Christie was a surfer. Anyway, we have another commercial break mid-reveal of the answers. For those of you keeping score at home, that's 2 commercial breaks during a reveal for one contestant's results out of the 13 seated on stage, and we're already a third of the way into the episode. During Hans's round, there was a Kevin Bacon question, and out comes Kevin Bacon to confirm the answer, which is something that I did not expect.
I wonder if he's too busy to give us the answer.
Ooh, oh.
Kevin Bacon, could you please join us?
And now I'm listening to Kevin Bacon talking about the pigs that he owns.
Yes, because my pigs, June and Johnny, I had to stop.
Yeah.
My wife still eats bacon.
And then he leaves. That might be the funniest cameo you could have ever possibly had. Like, I could have gone to the fridge for a snack and missed that entire exchange. It's that quick. The Kevin Bacon cameo sounded fun, but while I was editing, I did notice at the end that he is an executive producer of the show. So while it didn't make it any less exciting, it did kind of take away from the spontaneity of it all, where it's like, of course you would show up on a show you executive produce. We're still going over the answers, and at around question 9, Shaq presses a button to trigger an offer.
Maya Lin.
Wait.
What?
Oh, cowboy.
If Hans takes the offer, the game ends, and Shaq pitches out $27,000. And Hans respectfully declines because he's doing very well in this game. As someone that didn't have this part explained to him, I had no idea that was coming. This also happened like 2 minutes right after the Kevin Bacon cameo, so it was a lot was happening. But at the same time, nothing was happening. Anyway, All right, with one more answer to win $100,000. And honestly, make him the host because he's bringing way more energy to the show than these two. While he doesn't get 11 exactly right, he does get 12. Everyone congratulates him and he goes home with $100,000. And I said, yeah, that's awesome. But we are 23 minutes into the episode. So we have to pick at least one more person.
Stephanie Weckstein.
So next up is Stephanie, who grew up with a pet raccoon. She also brought her boyfriend, who was mic'd up in the audience. I'm going to let that one slide. They probably did it after. Well, they probably knew okay, it wasn't a random draw. They knew that she was going to get picked. So I'm going to let that one's a nitpick. It doesn't matter. Anyway, we roll off the questions and there isn't anything as interesting as when Hans went, because this is a more chill contestant, doesn't have as much energy as Hans. And when the contestant isn't exuding all of this energy, the game really, really feels slow. They ask her about Ice Spice, who she totally knows who that is.
The first name of rapper Ice Spice is Cinnamon. True or false?
I feel like that is just really out there. False.
She's also never seen Star Trek, which is unfortunate for her because that question pops up. She has a choice to change the question.
Thank you, Pepsi.
And then we go to a commercial break. Stephanie predicts that her lucky range is 7 to 9 correct for $25,000, and then has her lucky number be 7. That's my lucky number. She just like me for real. She gets the first one wrong out the gate. At 4 questions, she has 2 right, and at 6 questions, she has 3 right. On question 7, Shaq offers her $3,750. And with how the round is going, I'm not mad at that. But she rejects the offer. And she should have taken it because now we are 9 questions in and she's only gotten 3 of them correct. She gets a question about Amelia Earhart correct, but the last question she gets wrong. And even though she loses, they have to keep going because we are playing along at home. And it turns out that she only got 4 out of 13 right. And that's the show. That's everything. I know we only had 2 contestants here, but yeah, that was somehow 42 minutes of showtime. So now that I've recapped an episode really quickly, let me review the show and where I think it goes wrong. First of all, the pacing for this is horrendous. This is one of the slowest paced game shows I've ever seen. I know that Shaq played in 2000's NBA, but dude, are we being serious, man? Are we being for real? I counted up the minutes of gameplay. In this game show, there are about 11 minutes of answering questions. That's it. It is a 42-minute show. The rest of the show is basically Gina and Shaq being so robotic. That's its own section. Once again, I'm getting ahead of myself. The show feels both flat and bloated at the same time. Like, there doesn't really seem to be a time limit to the game, so you just spend a lot of time seeing the contestants debate whether something is true or false. I could go to the DMV right now and watch people try to take their driving test, and I would get that same feeling. That probably is even more exciting. There's more at stake over there. Another fun thing about this is that there are 13 people on the stage and only 2 of them get a chance to participate in the game. Also, Hans left, so that means that 14 people graced the stage. Only 2 of them got to actually play. And I understand there's a whole 13 theme in this game, but this feels unnecessary. This is already a weird game show set. It's devoid of color and personality, and on top of that, you have 12 strangers who we never meet have to pretend to be happy for the person actually playing the game that they really wanted to play. I know that I was sitting at home and I was happy for Hans, but if I was sitting in one of those chairs, I'd be like, respectfully, I don't know you. If you're not gonna pick me, can I go back to the audience? Another thing that really bothered me about this game show is that they spend more time reviewing the questions than actually answering them. They are true false questions, man. This should not take that long. I think another weakness of the show, which it didn't really register until I was editing the footage for this, is that this show takes a really, really long time giving you the satisfaction of if you're right or not. For example, let's say in Deal or No Deal, you pick 4 cases. You immediately know what's in those 4 cases. And that helps with the step-by-step excitement of it all, being like, oh, this might be an actual special episode. This person's getting really, really close to hitting that high mark and getting a really high offer from the dealer. Now imagine if in Deal or No Deal, you picked 6 cases and you didn't know what those 6 cases were like 5 minutes later, because they would just spend so much time going one by one to each case and do it all at the same time. And that's why it felt to me like this game show felt more like an online quiz than an actual game show. Like, I can't imagine you going through 5 clues in Jeopardy and then revealing the correct questions like minutes later. It's possible in Lucky 13 for you to answer a true-false question and then have to go through 2 commercial breaks before you get the answer to that question. And I just think that that's not good game show design. If there's potential that the audience could also lose track of what's being answered, that's not good. These shows are supposed to be easy to digest. I'm not saying that every game in game show history has to be Fast Money from Family Feud. I'm just saying that you could have sped this game up a bit. Lucky 13 could have been a half-hour show. I feel like if this was a half-hour show and it was like a little bit faster paced, you had a time limit for each question, that would be such a better paced show. But instead, for 3/4 of the game show, there was no game and there was barely a show. You can lower the difficulty of the questions but make people go faster. I think we'd be getting somewhere, but it just doesn't materialize into anything entertaining. I'm sorry. One of the worst things a game show can be is boring. The next part of this is that Gina and Shaq do not radiate game show host energy at all.
Welcome to Lucky 13 in Las Vegas, where we're not the only game in town, but we're definitely the most exciting.
You don't believe me?
I'm trying to rack my brain around how many game shows I know that have 2 co-hosts that share a stage. And I'm not talking about like Pat Sajak and Vanna White, because they each have their own job. Right? That's understood. Shaq and Gina just like stand there and take turns being game show hosts. And it's kind of unsettling. It's kind of off-putting. They also rarely talk to each other, which is fine because it's not about them, but it kind of is. Kind of is about them when they are positioned 6 feet from each other most of the time. I would have either put one of them off stage so they would have been forced to make conversation with each other and like throw it to the crowd, but no. It's just a weird vibe when there are 2 hosts and 1 contestant. It often feels like neither of them know when to talk, when to tell a joke, and just let it rock. The chemistry is not there. And I know that it's only 4 episodes in, but it just really felt like these 2 did not know each other at all. Another thing that is off about this show is Shaq's demeanor. For what's supposed to be a fun game show, it feels and looks like Shaq just watched the Charlotte Hornets playing against the Washington Wizards on national TV.
I have no words. Please give it up for Hans.
I'll be right back.
And for a game show to be seen as fun, you have to make it look like it's going to be fun. And Shaq doesn't do that. I get that Shaq is 53, but he's provided us with some funny moments for years on Inside the NBA. So my idea would be to replace Gina with Charles Barkley.
Got 2 words for you. Steve Nash and Chris Paul. Must-see TV.
That's more than 2 words.
You didn't say 2 words. You said quick to the point.
You just said I got 2 words.
Giving Shaq someone he's known for years would have probably made this game go over better and make it one where if you insist on the slow pace of a game show, we could have had it still be funny. Especially because I was watching the show and I don't think Shaq or Chuck know the answers to most of these questions. Gina's joke delivery is pretty dry in my opinion. It might not be for me, but that's just my opinion. There's just not enough game There's also not enough show. I know I've said this before in the video, but I really need to bring that home. If it were up to me, I would change the format a little, and I'd mix it up. Watching 11 minutes of true-false questions is just not it. Give me some multiple choice. Give me some memory. Give me some matching, anagrams, anything. Try a little bit harder to trip up the contestants. Or this could have been a trivia battle versus Shaq or something. Make Shaq either an ally or an enemy. If you're going to have two people co-host this, make one of them like be either an obstacle or a friend. It's not a surprise that this version of Lucky 13 got canceled, but it is a surprise that this show was popular. The show was reportedly ABC's most watched summer series premiere, which I feel like a lot of that had to do with just Shaq's popularity, but I do wish that it went to a better designed game show. And not only did the show get canceled, the studio reportedly owed Shaq and Gina $500,000 each because the studio pre-funded the show in return for a share of ABC's advertising and product placement sales. So it looks like the studio bet on the show being a huge financial success, and it didn't work out, even though it was a most watched summer series premiere. Since a lot of people reportedly watch this show, I can see it coming back in some way in the future, but I hope in that same future we can iron out some of the small problems that I have with it. Overall, I think it's too slow, too flat, and too awkward in its current state. Thank you guys for watching the end of the video. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Thank you to my Patreon subscribers. Thank you to my Nebula subscribers. I appreciate you guys so much. And on to the next video. Goodbye!